February 17th, 2024. Well, a lot is happening. I guess this is going to be a little bit of a hodgepodge because so much is happening at once here. But first of all, I guess focus on the results on Trump. The judge in this so-called fraud case that was pressed in New York has basically awarded or issued a judgment, I guess you say, of 350 some or $1 million or something like that. The exact number is very large over alleged fraud, which in fact there's no victim because uh, the banks in question apparently had no complaint and lost no money, and also said that was very normal to have statements of the sort that he made in these sort of cases, and that the banks and these large money loans rely on their own appraisal effort in order to come up with the worth of the properties that the loans are being made against. So, in other words, this is completely a vindictive situation. It's pressed by the New York State Attorney General, who ran on the idea of going after Trump, and then went in office and did it. To me, that sounds like if you're actually announcing before the case is filed that that's why you're running for office, it doesn't sound like that's a fair or unbiased prosecution. It seems like there's a strong conflict of interest there in the case to begin with, and there's a lot of other flaws in the case. You have a completely biased situation. So Trump is going to appeal, and I guess I don't know. Apparently, he's had more luck in appeals than he does with the specific court in which the case was tried in. In fact, I think there's even some question whether it was even tried in the right court. But so that's a major development coming down on the wake of his what 83, $87 million, something like that verdict in the case of the lady who he denied having sexually assaulted. In other words, as I understand, she was slandered to the tune of $83 million by denying the event happened, not for the actual alleged assault itself, which had already been settled in a separate case. So anyhow, so it goes in our confused justice system. So, and then another development I think that's kind of interesting in a different jurisdiction is that the special prosecutor who's looking at handling the case of Hunter Biden, who, remember, originally was going to let him off the hook completely, and then the judge threw the case out, and then they sort of had they finally declared him to be a formal special prosecutor rather than just the prosecutor, is now turned around and he's prosecuting Alexander Smirnov, who was the individual who had provided information to the FBI that it was supposedly a longtime trusted FBI informant, and this now is saying that he lied in his claims about Biden, and now he's being prosecuted for a false statement and obstruction of justice, which is kind of interesting when you think about it, because I mean, the people that are saying Biden did bad things are being prosecuted, where they tried to let Hunter off the hook. So one tends to think that this is another one of these flawed prosecutions of our corrupt Department of Justice. And one would tend to think that the reason he's being prosecuted is basically to try to destroy the evidential value of what he said rather than on the merits of the case. Of course, we'll have to wait and see what happens in court, because I mean the whole situation may go away before there will actually be any real outcome, if you will. I mean, that's the election will be over and so forth. But anyhow, so it goes. By the way, if you like these videos, please give me a like and subscribe if you haven't, particularly if you have a Google account, and you can always click the bell for notifications. But yeah, that's so that's kind of that. Now, another development on a totally different front, because like I said, this is kind of a bit of a hodgepodge I'm going to cover today. But and that is, of course, the death of Navalny, the Russian dissident who had been sentenced to a lengthy prison sentence for, you know, and I suppose that's also a dubious prosecution. I don't think we exactly trust the Russian justice system very much, but if you want to call it a justice system, legal system maybe. But anyhow, the point about that is that the question is that the allegation seems to be that Putin had him killed, which is interesting because, I mean, it seems to me, why would he have him killed at this point in time? I mean, it is true that previously he'd been poisoned with a Russian military nerve agent, which was, interestingly, it was a distinctive agent that was used just by the Russian military. It's not it's their kind of analog to the VX nerve agent used by in the United States inventory that at least we had before we supposedly demilitarized all this stuff. But it is a distinctly different chemical formulation, and and uh, and the interesting thing about that is that by using that particular agent to poison rather than something more generic, they kind of put their own signature on it. But at any rate, he'd been in prison for some time and moved to a place in Siberia, and supposedly had been seen alive recently, and some, I think it was kind of a court appearance thing or something that he had to do, and now he's dead. And of course, the question we don't, of course, the circumstances of death are unknown and probably will never be believed. And it's sort of one of those situations. I mean, it's possible he was killed by order of Putin. Obviously, it just seems to me an interesting time to do it, right before the election. I mean, you would think he would like do it after the election or some other time. It just seems like a weird time to do something like that. It's also possibly, I don't know if he has a cellmate. It's possible he could have just been killed by somebody that didn't like him. I mean, we don't know that yet and probably never will know because no matter what the Russians say, we won't trust it, and probably for good reason. And so, and I'm sure that our side is going to be making allegations regardless of evidence as well. So we just don't know. But I thought that's created a bit of a furor because this guy was a major anti-corruption person, spokesman, protester, I guess you'd say. And so anyhow, and I guess the slate has been closed for the Russian presidential election, and I don't know whether this will have any effect on Putin's ability to win or not. But apparently there's three other candidates, and maybe this was the thought that crossed my mind. If he did have this done, it is possible this was just to intimidate the other candidates into not campaigning too vigorously. I don't know. But anyway, that's another piece of news that's got everybody stirred up. And of course, the other thing that's been on the agenda fairly recently was this discussion of a nuclear, some kind of a nuclear space weapon that the Russians had. Presumably, we're talking about that would be used against satellites. Presumably, this is an EMP type device, I would think. And so I mean, I don't know what the big deal. I mean, this is well within the range of any nuclear power, basically, that has nuclear weapons and missiles. I mean, we tested devices of this sort in the early 60s, the famous Starfish Prime detonation of a 1.4 megaton device that knocked out some satellites back in 1962 and kind of began to show us the danger of EMP from nuclear explosions in the ionosphere. So presumably it's something along these lines, but what it is exactly we don't know. But they create a bit of a buzz. A lot of people think it was some kind of way to gin up a vote on this $95 billion foreign aid bill, which includes $60 billion for Ukraine. The House has went into recess, I guess, for the time being, for a week or so, or maybe two. So it doesn't look like the vote is going to come up on that anytime soon. And as I've pointed out lately, in the present form with no border security measures. It's dubious that it can get through the House unless it's done with a discharge petition. And even that's kind of unlikely, I think, at this point. More, it would seem what would be still recommended, as I mentioned previously, is to put HR 2 or key elements from HR 2 in and combine that with the bill and put that up for a vote. And if we could get that through the House, kick it back over to the Senate side and basically let them be the ones that hold things up rather than the Republicans in the House. But we'll see what happens there. There's the other problem is, can we get the Republicans with their slim majority to all agree to get something like that passed? And of course, speaking of the slim majority, they lost the New York 3rd district race by about, I think, something on the order of about 8%. However, the vote was, I only have seen it's 93% complete, so I don't know what the final tally was, and Googling around, I never see it. So we'll figure out whether it gets a little better than that. But I think key to that was the bulk of the vote was in the early voting, and it was a horrible snowstorm on the day of the election day, so the vote was pretty much suppressed. And given the amount of effort and focus on that election, and compared to the results in the 2022 election, when Santos won, my guess is that the decisive factor may well have been the snowstorm. So I guess there'll be a rematch in the fall, and the Democrats get that one. I'm not too surprised there, but that was. I'm also a little bit questioning the candidate they came up with. Apparently, the idea was to appeal to there's a large Jewish population in that district, and since she is an Israeli immigrant from Israel, apparently that was one of her selling points to them, but apparently it didn't work. The Democrat has always lied and claimed that he was really big on border security and was going to cooperate a lot with Republicans to get things done. I'm sure that's going to happen. But anyhow, so that's kind of the state of affairs right now, and so I'll be wrapping this up for now and post this on Rumble as well as on YouTube, and the addresses and my social media accounts are in the description below. Until next time.